Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were a young couple who worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Just yesterday morning, a colleague said, "We were still laughing together by the coffee corner. Now all that remains is a picture." The couple were at an event last night at the Capitol Jewish Museum, right in the heart of D.C. They left the building around 9 p.m. and were shot at close range by a man who lay in wait. Police said the gunman had been seen pacing back and forth outside the building, then approached a group of 4 people as they left, pulled out a handgun and shot 2 of them. Police have identified the suspect as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago. After the shooting, he entered the building, and at first, witnesses said he appeared distressed and gave him water.
The security guard happened to let this guy in. I guess they were thinking that he was a victim. So about 10 minutes later, when the cops actually came in, he said, "I did this." He said, "Sir, I'm unarmed." He put his hands up.
And then he reaches into his bag and pulls out a keffiyeh and says, "I did it. I did this for Gaza."
That traditional keffiyeh scarf to show solidarity with the people of Gaza was handed to police as the suspect was taken into custody and appeared to make his motivation clear.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Organisers said the event had been about humanitarian aid and trying to bring both sides together. Now a cold-blooded murder in the heart of Washington, D.C. has left the Jewish community in fear.
Well, this thing is, I think, going to shake the whole community. Right now, it's like every trauma. It's a shock. Never seen this before. 2 Jews shot dead in the street in Washington, D.C., just like that. But we'll have to process this. We'll have to come together as a community and be resilient, strong, and overcome the challenge.
Israel's Prime Minister Bejamin Netanyahu called the killing appalling anti-Semitic murder, while his foreign minister blamed critics of the Israeli government who he said incited the violence.
There is a direct line connecting anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to this murder. This incitement is also done by leaders and officials of many countries and international organizations, especially from Europe.
This week, Keir Starmer said he was horrified by Israel's escalation of the war in Gaza.
Where the level of suffering, innocent children being bombed again, is utterly intolerable.
But today, he too condemned the attack as anti-Semitic and evil. Today, the FBI raided the home in Chicago where the suspect Elias Rodriguez is believed to live. He wasn't on any police watch list, but he was once a member of a left-wing group known for sharing anti-Israeli rhetoric and posted a manifesto on X last night condemning Israel and referring to an armed act that was apparently about to happen. In the early hours, President Trump said the killings were obviously anti-Semitism, and hatred and radicalism, he said, have no place in the USA, while his Attorney General visited the scene this morning.
What we saw last night was disgusting. I saw a young man's body being taken away who was about to get engaged. He had an entire life in front of him, and that was taken away. The hate has got to stop, and it has to stop now. And this person will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
As she spoke, officials were conducting the Jewish ritual of painstakingly clearing the site where the couple perished. A couple that were due to travel to Jerusalem to get engaged next week. The gold ring already bought by 30-year-old Yaron for his 26-year-old fiancée-to-be, Sarah. Now both their young lives taken in a seemingly never-ending cycle of hatred and violence. Well, that corner behind me that you can see there is the exact spot where the young couple were killed last night. And in the last half hour or so, Prime Minister Bejamin Netanyahu of Israel has appeared on television and given a very angry, fiery statement in which he has lambasted international leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, for their criticism of Israel this week, and said to them, in light of what happened here last night, that they were now on the wrong side of history. Let's hear a clip from the Prime Minister now.
They want Israel to stand down and accept that Hamas's army of mass murderers will survive, rebuild, and repeat the October 7th massacre again and again and again, because that's what Hamas has vowed to do. I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history.
Well, we were also here earlier when the Israeli ambassador came to visit the scene, and we asked him that given the event in that building there last night was all about bridging the divide and about humanitarian aid, was now the time for Israel to really knuckle down and try and get a ceasefire. He told us pointedly that Israel was always looking for a ceasefire and said that they were tired of what he called the obsessive barrage of criticism against his country. As for the suspect, he is due to appear in court later today, and the White House has just promised that he will be punished, they say, to the full extent of the law.
Siobhan, thank you very much indeed there from Washington. Well, before Prime Minister Netanyahu made his statement, I spoke to Labour peer Lord Levy, a leading voice in the British Jewish community. His cousin Emily Damari was taken hostage by Hamas on October the 7th and released this January. He has condemned the Israeli government's assault on Gaza and has come out in support of the British government's move to suspend trade talks with Israel. I asked him if, as a member of the Jewish community, he feels increasingly unsafe.
To wake up, as I did this morning, and see a tragedy of two very wonderful young lives being taken in such horrific circumstances in Washington, I mean, one just has to pinch oneself as to what is going on in the world. It's absolutely horrendous. Two innocent lives just taken in cold blood like that. Mm. And you ask the question about safety and security. We're in a very unsafe world, and security has to be a concern for all of us, no matter who we are, but particularly if we are of the Jewish faith, if we're openly Jewish, and frankly, known to be Jewish.
The Israeli government, various members of the Israeli government have responded to the events in Washington in a number of ways, but essentially what they're all trying to do, and I'll read out a couple of quotes in a minute, is to link criticism of Israel and Israeli policy in the war against Hamas in Gaza with this attack. The Minister for Diaspora Affairs has directly named Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron and Mark Carney for their criticism of Israel, and said that if they hadn't criticised, more or less, if they hadn't criticised Israel in this way, these attacks might not have happened. Do you think that's a fair point to be made by the Israeli government?
Frankly, for him to say what he said is absolutely outrageous. To blame Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron, and Prime Minister Carney, these three who are absolutely wanting peace. But then you take the other side of the coin, and Yair Golan has said what Netanyahu and his government are doing, they, because of what is going on in Gaza, are, unfortunately, they are the catalyst for what happened and what is going on.
I mean, the Prime Minister, Bejamin Netanyahu, without naming Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron, essentially said that criticism of Israel at the moment is tantamount to a blood libel that leads to these kind of attacks. This is the head of the government making the same point.
Netanyahu's game is always to go on the attack. It doesn't matter who he attacks, as long as he tries to prove that he is right. And again, for him to criticize like that and use that sort of vocabulary, that to me is extreme. And it just saddens me, Matt, that we're in this position, that a prime minister can say these things, a prime minister of Israel. Let him look in the mirror. Let him see what he's done over this last period of time, and then perhaps let him reflect.
I guess the bigger point here is that ever since October the 7th and the massacre by Hamas, in which your own cousin was caught up in, she was a hostage, released recently, Emily Damari. But ever since then, the Israeli government has been very clear that criticism of its policies, criticism of it, is tantamount to anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. And do you think it is possible to criticise the government of Israel without being anti-Semitic?
Of course one can be critical of a government. Of course one can be critical of Israel. Israelis are critical of their government. Israelis are critical of things that are going on in Israel. Does that make someone who's critical of something that's going on in Israel an anti-Semite? Absolutely not. If you're critical of this government in this country, does that mean you're anti-British or you're against the country? No, it means you're critical of a stand the government is taking.
You work very closely with the Blair government. You work very closely, with the incredible tangle of Middle Eastern politics to try and, help bring about some kind of solution there. Do you think it is time for this government now, the government of Sir Keir Starmer, to recognise the Palestinian state?
Ultimately, should there be a Palestinian state? Yes, there should be. On what terms should it be? On what basis should it be? That is a very complicated subject. But certainly when I was doing what I was doing as Blair's envoy, there was absolute serious talk about the possibility of a two-state solution, i.e. for there to be a state of Palestine. And if there can be a way forward where Israel can live side by side with a Palestinian state, but with all the security protections necessary for Israel, but for Palestinians also to be able to lead their lives in a way that they have hope and aspiration for the future with all the region. There has to be peace in this region. It's a wonderful part of the world, Matt. And the only way forward is for peace for all of the peoples in that region.
Lord Levy, thank you very much for your time.
Matt, thank you, sir.